Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Thursday, November 13th. How did we get here already? I know you're probably asking that same question. How did we get here already? Uh, Good morning. I'm Delia Jackie Hope Glass, Mama, Navy Vet, certified doer, and the laced up legislator for the House of Delegates, 93rd District. So honored and grateful to serve and to be of service on this Thursday morning. It is the morning dew. Let me tell you something about myself, okay, real quick. I was sitting this morning and I'm starting to get like speech therapy or whatever. Or no, I saw a therapist yesterday and she was like, that voice, you gotta. And so I'm doing my job of drinking my tea, but I realized something odd about myself. Does any of you all have like weird habits, like weird things that you do? I'm a spoon collector. I like little spoons, and I just love this little spoon that I found at a thrift shop. It's like it looks like a flower. You see it, like how it's got ripples in it. Anyway, it's something weird about me. Just something odd that I don't know, just thought I'd share. But thank you guys for joining us today, Dominique, Kevin, Venable. Yes, just started following your page, Venable for VA. Congratulations on taking the step to run. It's not a small thing when people decide that they're going to run for office at all. It's a huge deal. What I'd like to do this morning is sort of level set at about 2 a.m. Kevin Willie, aka K Willie 97 1984, sent me a video of Hannah Nicole Jones, and I thought that it was so like powerful. It hit me in real time, so I want to like talk about that video. Um, but what I really want to level set with is like we need to talk about actually we need to name this pattern that we're actually living through right now. We're all living through this pattern of behavior that it chills rooms before conversation even starts, especially at a time when we are trying to talk to each other about what we're seeing, how we're feeling about it. I know y'all, some of y'all are trying, like, I've gotten asked several times in spaces, what you think about the Senate vote? What you think about this? Like, there's this thing that's happening across these United States called compliance in advance. And it was in this video that, again, thank you, Kevin, for sending it, who's on the here with us. There's this historian. So compliance in advance is something that I want to talk about today. Like, and I really want y'all to think about how this may affect your daily life. Like, where do you see where maybe on the job this has happened, maybe you've accidentally done it because it just felt like the right thing to do. There's a historian, his name is Timmy Snyder, and he puts compliance in advance in this way. He says most of the power of authoritarianism is given freely, right? It's freely given. The people start doing the censor's work for them before they're even asked. So I'm looking at our big government and thinking, yo, we know that they want this authoritarian rule, but sometimes we're doing the work for that. And what does that mean for us? What does that mean for classrooms? What does that mean for libraries? What does that mean for boardrooms? What does that mean for block clubs? So in this moment, what does not complying look like practically right now? And so this video, which I would love, Kevin, if you got it, you can drop it in the chat on Instagram because I see you there. I'm thinking as I was listening to Nicole Hannah Jones, she's the writer of the 1619 Project, right? She was talking about that chilling effect specifically in higher education, where she's seen districts back out of Black history events under the new political pressure. And then when that happened to her in her hometown, so she's from Waterloo, what she did when the district backed out, she simply hosted an African American read-in anyway, through that 1619 Freedom School. So again, the district pulled out of fear of losing federal funding. That is compliance in advance. And so instead, she chose to build a space for the truth instead. What I need us to sit with, all of us, to truly sit with, is that we're at a time where we can't outsource courage. We have to build these rooms where the truth can actually breathe. I'm going to say that again. Courage, it just cannot be outsourced, whether it's in the home, having conversations with the people that you know and love, whether it's in the workplace or it's in the library or it's in the classroom. We are responsible in this time to build rooms where the truth can actually breathe. Let's kind of do a weather report and how that could be difficult. Just sort of, thank you, Kevin, for putting that in the chat, that Instagram reel. I think it's on, I think it's on her page. So if you don't follow Nicole Hannah-Jones, this is actually on her page. So here's kind of our policy weather report under the guise of the education piece. I don't know if you guys know this. In January, the White House, what the White House did was ordered agencies to craft this sort of ending indoctrination strategy to reestablish the 1776 Commission. That signaled a preferred narrative for patriotic educationing. So when the government starts to define which history, this is when the government starts to try to define what histories are uniting and which histories are divisive. And a lot of institutions sort of read the headwinds and go quietly ahead of time. Again, that is compliance in advance. So then in July, if you remember, if you're in the know, the Justice Department issued guidelines to everybody who got federal funding, warning them that DEI branded programs could be unlawful if they treat lead people differently by protective traits. So whether you agree with that or not, the effect is immediate. The general counsels and superintendents and grant writers and even some of the boards I sit on start saying, you know what, let's not risk it. That is compliance in advance. Then you get to take it to the state level, right? So you've got the executive, you've got some of those folks, you take it to the state level. We've seen across the country these bans of diversity, equity, and inclusion offices. Texas, actually, in Texas, the public universities cut hundreds of positions to programs just to comply before. So leaders testified that they were like dismantling programs before deadlines hit. Another like classic example of compliance, pre-compliance behavior, right? Complying in advance. Why am I telling you all this, right? Because none of what I just told you, none of that says that history is illegal. Right? The truth of our history, not on any of it said the truth of our history is actually illegal. You can't get arrested for telling the truth of our history. But when you put it all together, what it sets is incentives so that strong people censor themselves first. And then they say, oh, well, that's just being prudent, right? So it's not illegal. And I'm looking at everybody who shows up here in the morning, right? You know, if you've got a time where you think maybe I just did the safe thing, and I get it, there is a level of self-preservation in this work, in society, on the job, at school. There is. You want to preserve, but the strongest among us start to censor themselves and think that that's prudent, and that's where it gets dangerous. That's where it gets hard. That is where we find, the work needs to happen. And let's be honest, it's not just fear, right? It's not only fear, because I'm not going to paint people with a wide swath and say, oh, they're just afraid, because I don't subscribe to that. I don't think that it's just fear. Social scientists have like names for what's happening. One is called the spiral of silence, right? The spiral of silence is when we hold back, when we're thinking our view is unpopular, right? When the fewer people who speak, the quieter the rest of the room becomes, right? So the spiral of silence. I don't know that I have a popular opinion, so I just won't say anything, and no one else will say anything, and that just makes the room silent. Social scientists have also said it's a thing called come on. It's called preference falsification. Yeah, preference falsification. It's when we say what we think is safe, right? So you and I sit in a room and we say what we think is safe, even if we believe otherwise. And that's how norms flip without a single law being passed, without a single thing changing on the job. We start to, again, that spiral of silence and that preference of falsification. You prefer to speak the safest thing, the which also could be a false narrative, and that's how there isn't even need. So when you get these universities canceling speakers before anybody complains or shifting the syllabus just in case, the free speech group fire has like that tracked over so many campuses, and that is what they talked about, this pressure to that we're not allowed to speak. And to be fair, this isn't new. I think we all know this isn't new, that we have paid for this before, right? As a society, we have paid for pre-compliance before. And I need you all to think about where this is happening in your everyday life, what your thoughts are. I love to see it. Kevin says, and stop bringing paid and unpaid speakers to share the truth on colleges, campuses, and universities. Absolutely. That did happen. They stopped bringing those speakers in. And it's not, and really, it hit me in a way because I am in spaces and I am in rooms that are not necessarily dealing with the White House or anything. And I can see this happening. You might be able to see it on the job or at a board you sit on in your house, in your own home. But the thing about it is let's contextually look at where we as a society have paid for this before. Way back when studios, there's this, when we had McCarthyism and Hollywood, in his like Hollywood blacklist studios, there were studios blacklisted artists voluntarily, not under subpoena, right? Their careers were ruined and the content shifted. Like scholarships showed, the scholar shows, they showed fewer progressive films came out during that time. And that's because McCarthy, right? That cultural cost of kind of anticipatory obedience, right? Like just obeying obedience in advance. Then when we look at the Japanese American incarceration, right? Do you guys remember those? That camp newsletters and public communications just sort of practice self-censorship under the federal oversight. So communities recorded daily life, but clipped out their own voice to appease authorities. And again, pre-compliance, when they were they didn't put their own. What happened is we don't have people's truth in the archive. It just sanded down the archive. So every time we comply in advance, every single time, we are ultimately trading part of our. So every time that we comply in advance, we are trading part of our memory and the future that memory could have built. And what I'm not saying here for us in this time where we feel the pressure to just do what's right, keep your head down. I'm not saying performative outrage, because that is not the thing. What I do believe in is strategic dissent in a way. It's acts that are designed to advance learning and liberty and not heat up, not just for the headlines. And a parallel to that, I think, is what Hannah Nicole did. I talked about earlier that when her district was like, nah, we're not going to have you here. What she did was she moved to her own resources. She built a room. That is a classic strategy. You build the venue that the moment that the door closes. So I'm asking you, on your job, in your life, where are you building, right? Where are you building the rooms for your truth to help the masses move forward? There's some research on civil resistance that shows that nonviolent movements are more effective and need participation for surprisingly a small amount of people. just a small amount of people that are committed, and a small committed share of the population. And you can look this up. It's called the 3.5% rule. The 3.5% rule. So when you pair that with organization and unity, you get results. So you don't need everybody. You just need some disciplined somebodies in order to really sort of help move rooms forward. You also got to know your actual constraints. In Texas, they have this Senate bill, I think it's 17, the one that banned all of the DEI office and practices. But universities noted that the law does not actually ban course content per se. So where teaching is still lawful, you teach boldly and you teach well. So don't erase yourself on rumors, right? This is the thing. And then every last one of us, I think, are responsible in some way, shape, or form. As like a storyteller, the way I've been looking at this time is like paper trails matter, right? If the venue says like we scared we're gonna lose funding, then ask for it. Ask for the clause. Put sunlight on your own. You're responsible for your own history. Period. Like every last one of us. Every time we talk about the history piece, I think about Anne Frank's diary and how it has colored the way that we see the Holocaust. Like you also in this time have a responsibility to document the chill. And with that, the idea of strategic dissent isn't a reckless thing. It's about like it's disciplined courage directed towards specific outcomes, right? And I think that there's a level of responsibility that we all can take in that. And so as certified doers, here's what I think we can do. Here's some things I think we can do. Actually, you know what? I was thinking about this in parenting, right? Like I just saying this out loud because we're talking about compliance and neglect. As a parent, especially Black parents, we coach our kids how to survive in systems, right? Police, school, peers, and how to minimize themselves in advance. And the cost sometimes is that our kids internalize fear as a life strategy and never learn when not to fold. It is this idea that we're teaching safety. Absolutely, we're teaching safety, but we can only teach our children how to shrink. And I think that's false. We also have to teach them how to stand inherently. Another place I think about this, and Kevin, thank you for sending this to me because it's really been sitting with me. I think about, faith and civic spaces because I am in a space where there are a lot of faith-based organizations. So when you see like congregations and community boards allowing harmful speech, whether it's misogyny or whether it's bullying, because it's just how, that's how brother so-and-so talks, or we don't want no drama. Good people leave. And that compromises the mission. And sometimes the whole room complies in advance and nobody wants to be the first to say that ain't right. That ain't right. In our world where we're about to be in the holiday season, people oftentimes let corporations overcharge, refuse refunds, or exploit workers because challenging them feels exhausting and pointless. I can tell you, like, I'd completely cut down my patronage to Walmart. And I think I told y'all this after saying the high cost of low prices. What it costs us is that power concentrates in the hands of those who are counting on our silence. And so every time we say it's not worth the fight, we make it easier for them to spread this next harm across the land. Each of you are joining me here on social media. So I know I just talked about the idea of this in education, but each of you are joining me here on social media. People hide their political opinions sometimes here to avoid speaking on an issue that matters, or they water it down their identity because they're afraid of being targeted or misread or misjudged. I feel that way too. But the cost here, because we have not learned how to dissent with each other, is that communities ultimately are losing their diversity of thought and stories that build actual strength. A lot of us have deleted a post before even hitting send, not because it was wrong, but because we were scared of who might see it. And that's real, right? Compliance, self-censorship, and advance. Um, I'm looking at this from the context of learning from my own childhood in families, especially Black families. I can only speak from my own experiences. Sometimes we adopt that idea of like, don't rock the boat mentality. Kids learn, don't question your elders. Adults learn not to bring not to bring up harm. And the cost is this generational trauma that goes unchallenged, and silence becomes inherited. And some of us actually learned compliance in advance before we could even spell our own names. And we are taught to not ask, to not tell, to not push, and to look how long it takes. What am I trying to say? And look how long it takes some of us to heal from that. We've got to do better. People avoiding compliance and advances is also like when people avoid, going to the doctor, reporting domestic violence, filling out workplace injury paperwork, standing up for your child's needs in special education because they assume the system won't help. So it just deepens. And then people like you and I, or people they carry pain, they carry untreated trauma, they carry health conditions because they could have intervened earlier. And it is this idea that sometimes this non-compliance, right, looks like telling your doctor the whole truth, even when it's uncomfortable, instead of self-silencing because you don't want to be judged. I've been there. I've paid that cost. I've seen it in my own neighborhoods when people don't confront their neighbor blasting racist rhetoric or blasting the music, because that used to be a thing. That's civic, the civic league gatekeeping, or the business treating folks unfairly. They don't want the drama, so they let the loudest, most hostile people determine the tone of the room. This is what happens when communities, and we are talking about the national level, but we need to bring it back to home, bring it back to our own block doers, that when communities normalize bad behaviors, the worst voices become the default voices. We comply and advance when we let disrespect or bigotry pass at the cookout or at the civic league because we don't want to make it a thing. That is what we do. And I'm saying this if you are an employer or an employee, when you edit yourself before the boss speaks, folks don't report that discrimination, that toxic leadership, that unethical practice because they assume that nothing's going to be done, or they've the fear of being labeled difficult. The cost is that culture will rot from the inside. Harm is going to go unaddressed, and that talent will leave quietly. That's period. That is the truth. Compliance in advance happens every time somebody at work sees wrongdoing and then whispers about it in the hallway instead of naming it in the room. We have conditioned ourselves to do this. And now that it's on a grand national stage, we have someone who is playing to every bit of that, every single bit of that, every bit of that. And so what I want you all to understand is, like, listen, it is not just happening. This compliance in advance is not just happening on school campuses. It shows up in our everyday lives. We do it at work. We do it in our families. We do it online. We do it in the doctor's office. We do it in neighborhood meetings. It is the soft, slow erosion of our voice before anyone even threatens it. So I want you to think about, how can we be in a place where we know better and do better. Where I know that safety, oh gosh, I have comments I haven't seen it, where safety feels real, because that's the thing, is oftentimes it just does not feel safe. I'm going to go to the comments because I didn't see the comments. My apologies. They weren't coming up. And I'm just going on and on because I'm thinking we quiet today. Antoine 22 says, I'm 50 years old. I had no idea you were 50. You looking good, bro. Have traveled the world. I have 3 degrees. I've served my country. I've learned about my own Black history from social media, free speech than any other classroom. That's real. That's real. Good morning. Hey, Sierra. I owe you a text message. I've been thinking about you. So how does the First Amendment protect people against backlash? So how does the First Amendment protect citizens against backlash, or has the amendment become dissolved? I think it is a matter of believing in that First Amendment. The thing about the First Amendment and, the right to free speech, it didn't say it doesn't come without consequence, right? It says you have the right to do it. That doesn't make you free. Any one of us, that doesn't make any one of us free from consequence of said truth. So I think that the amendment still exists. It's still a practice, but we also have to deal with the consequence of said freedom. Antoine says, I want my 22-year-old daughter to speak her Black truth out loud without oppression and censorship or public disapproval of that truth. Yeah, and it's also arming, and that's fair, arming her with the information. I appreciate that. Sierra Goodman says, okay, I see. If we become the majority of the people to stand up, if we become the majority of the people stand up and speak, we can create a guard against that backlash. Yep. Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes it's the masses that are really, that it continues for them, the harm. But like I said, that 3.5 rule, right? That 3.5% rule says you only need a few somebodies. And it does make the difference. Kevin says, our ancestors spoke up. They spoke out. It worked. It wasn't without some pain, but it was necessary then. And it begins again now. Call it out. Yeah. And I'm a believer of, like, in this work, call me in before you call me out, right? I'm not always hyper aware of what's happening or how it's happening. I need you in this work, right? I need you in this work. So in that vein of trying to understand, to Sierra's point, it's like, you got to name the right, open up your space, right? Know that know what the right is. Getting partners, to Sierra's point, right? Pair with partners, whether that's your institution, that's at work, get your people, and also be able to teach the method, not the moment, right? Like in this moment, we're in a moment right now. And Kevin just said very clearly, like, the ancestors went through these things, right? Your people. What I think we also forget, and I'm going to speak from being in this Black skin, is that there were people that were not in this skin that helped that revolution, right? That brought things forward. We had the knitting circles, right? Like these groups of white women who use their power to create these knitting circles to be able to help folks to freedom. We have to teach that method and not just this moment. So when content is sensitive, anchor it in the primary sources and methods. Let the evidence lead, right? Because we're in this moment now, there's evidence that these practices work, right? Because we've seen what happened in Germany, there's evidence that X, Y, and Z work. Let's teach the method. And that's harder to sort of caricature, and very much so easier to defend when done right in these times. What I'd also say is that, we also have to adopt, and like processing what Sierra said is like, does it mean that the amendment has been dissolved, and the thought process that it doesn't dissolve us from consequence. What we also can do, and this is just thinking about that, because there is a real consideration, because I don't want to just use the word fear. There's a real consideration that we have for consequences. But when we're operating with each other towards finding a space where the truth can breathe, right? Creating these spaces where the truth can breathe. Let's try to adopt a no cancellation rule, right? Like we're going to sit in this space. We're going to be uncomfortable. We're not going to cancel each other. We're not going to nix things or shut things down. We're going to allow things to happen, right? If you think it's just vibes, right? If you think like I'm not gonna do it just because it's vibes, or I just said, then let the show go on. Let the descent happen. We have to train ourselves for dissent and how we talk with each other, offering ourselves spaces to teach in on teach-ins, right? Teach how to disagree with each other, how to use evidence base. That is literally how the civil rights movement era scaled their leadership. So there's some practices that we can do with and for each other in this work. I think that personal courage does take practice, y'all. It really does. It takes a lot of practice. So let's, like, if we could day by day, and I'll try to put this as a post. I can't guarantee it. I need to hire some folks, but the reality is that personal courage does take practice. So like take a day where you speak once where you thought you were going to be silent, right? Just say you thought sometimes, whether it's family, whether it's workplace, whether it's out in the community, there are places where you just choose silence. And I'm not begrudging anyone for that, but pick a day, like day one, choose that my first day, that today I'm going to speak once where I thought I was going to be silent. And once you accomplish that, or you unlock that goal, then maybe take some time to invite an ally to a conversation, right? Like really sit down with people who are your people. Don't forget that 3.5% rule I told you about. That is a Harvard study rule. Pick a day where you all sit down and just like have that conversation. It is okay to ask for things in writing. I've had to do it, right? When you're in these spaces, whether it's a school system, it's a workplace, or if it's somebody that you are in debate and say, can you show me where that is? Like, do you mind? I'd say like there's 3 questions you can ask, especially when you're dealing with people who like to, fight with vibes and not facts. 3 questions you can say, what policy are you citing? How does that apply to this moment? And what is it? So what policy are you citing? How does it apply to the moment? And what alternatives would be completely compliant? So tell me what is compliant. Bureaucracies answer to receipts. So like, tell me like, okay, so then what would compliant? What would that be? And those are fair questions to ask people on the job. I would even host, right? Like get yourself to, maybe it's on the lunch hour, maybe it's at the family dinner, or maybe you don't have family dinner. You have one where you have a true circle, right? The true circle, it could be monthly neighborhoods read-ins or group viewings. It could be a topic where you guys sit and you decide that, hey, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this topic, or we're going to talk about this one skill. So whether you're talking about reconstruction or you're talking about source seeking, right? Because that's a thing nowadays. People don't know how to check their sources. It can be a public thing. It can be calm. It can be welcoming. People can post notes openly. It's the way that we learn and we build together. I would ask day 5, right? Maybe write your representative with a local story. Yeah, requesting a fix, right? You all have the right to engage with us as elected leaders. So take some time on some of these truths. I can tell you, I got stopped just in the past couple of days several times. And what do you think about the senator doing this? What do you think the House is going to do? What do you like? People really saying, here's how it affects me and my family, and I want to know your thoughts. It is okay to do that to your people. You also need to rest and reflect. I'll say that because I know my anxiety gets really high when I practice personal courage. right? I can feel it in my stomach. I can feel it in my chest. Sometimes I just want to throw up. But again, personal courage, it takes practice. It really does. It's not something that we all just wake up and we have. And there are people who do it. I am not one of them. I'm not one of those people who have woken up, who wake up and just have this courage. It doesn't, it's a practice. And so there is also a space where you have to rest and really think about, I'm telling you, get a journal or an audio file where you just speak your truth, you speak your things, and think about what changed because you didn't comply in advance, right? When you exercise that personal courage, I want you to really reflect on what changed because you were not the person who said out front, I'm going to do the thing. I'm looking at some of these things. It says, we are past the time of doing absolutely nothing. We have to do something, choose what the something is and get engaged. Yeah. And listen, there's nothing too small. I'm going to say that there's nothing too small. Don't get in over your head and think that you've got to do this grand big thing. That's not how these things work. It is the smallest of things that make the biggest of difference in the largest of communities and sometimes in the smallest of communities. And that's how we have to operate. Sierra said, can I share those questions again? The questions that I said to sort of ask, especially when you're dealing with people that, don't necessarily know how to, so when they're just spewing things, I'd say, what policy are you citing? How does that apply to this moment? Get them to explain, right? And then what alternatives would clearly be compliant? So what you're saying is cite your source, tell me how it applies, and then also tell me, okay, then help me understand what alternatives would be compliant. Like what would be compliance, right? That's what I would say is when we're sort of questioning those folks. Kay Woody says we have a supper club. Yeah, you ready, Kevin? Kevin, you want to do a supper club where we can learn, where we can share, where we can grow, we can build together. Yes, certified doers. Yes, certified doers. Yes, absolutely. What I'll say is this. It's not just me and my skin. Our ancestors did the scariest things. European ancestors, Hispanic and Latino ancestors, Irish ancestors, Native indigenous ancestors, Hawaiian, Asian Pacific Islander. All of our ancestors did the scariest thing again and again. So we can inherit a bigger room for truth that is not unique to any one race or space or ethnicity or religion or faith. Our ancestors did the scariest of things over and over and over. And what we inherited is a bigger room for truth. But that inheritance has to still be fought for. The ask today isn't rage. That's not what I'm asking for any of you today. It's to refuse the quiet that erases us. Okay? I'm not saying go raise hell. I just want us to refuse that quiet that sort of that erases us. Don't pre-cancel your courage. Build spaces. Teach evidence. Document the chill, right? That effect that it has on us. Practice the courage to speak once more. Right? Practice that courage to speak until it seems comfortable, until it becomes comfortable. Right? So the so what, now what, right? Because we got to get to that. So what, now what? And I got to shut up. Kevin, it looks like you got somebody that's going to go ahead. One and only Misha, y'all need to link up. Y'all should link up offline. Y'all see each other's name. So supper club, I'm interested. And if you invite the delegate, girl, I might be there, y'all. Okay, Willie, come on, tell me. So the so what, now what? So what, now what is pre-compliance. It shrinks our story. It shrinks our culture and it changes our future, right? Pre-compliance shrinks our story and our future. We don't need that. Now what? We act. right? It is strategic, it is nonviolent, but it is also together. Understanding that as we move together, it ain't gonna be roses and sunshine. We're not always gonna agree, but we're gonna challenge each other, right? We're gonna come with learning how to cite our sources, learning how to strategically disagree with each other so that we get better outcomes. All right. Can we do that? Can we do that? Yeah, that's what I got today. I want to thank K Willie 97 1984 for sending that video to me. It really, this morning, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. It truly inspired me of just, compliance in advance. It's not, look, that's not good for business. Compliance in advance is not good for business. So again, it's the work we do. Let's do it in the doctor's office. Let's do it in the community. Let's do it. Let's do it with our families. Let's do it in our neighborhoods. Yeah, it's the soft. I'll say this again. It is a soft, slow erosion of our voice before anybody even threatens it, and I'm not with that. All right. I hope you're not. Until next time, I'm Delegate Jackie Hope Glass. What up, certified doers? Hey, neighbors. So glad to see you. Honored to serve and look forward to seeing you guys on the flippity flop. If you find something interesting that you think I should be talking about or that you just want me to be in the know, I certainly appreciate the doers that drop in my DMs and tell me or send me a video to say this is good gal, just good information. I'm going to just shout a couple of them out before I leave. The Lansby. So at the Lansby, I think that's the Lansby.co, Lansby, LANDSBY.co /find your village. Thank you for sharing the information about the public grocery store. Sharon Hendricks, I appreciate. She sent me a bunch of resources and food resources for federal workers, so I appreciate it. Kevin, you sent me the video about that today's was based off of. I also appreciate that. And then just for the encouragement, the fires, all the things that you all have been doing since the election and forevermore. I'm so grateful. I couldn't ask for a better space and place to share with people. Remember, we got to hold each other accountable. Keep me accountable. Oh, Clifton. Oh my goodness. I haven't seen you in so long. Now it's a good one. It'll be there. Yeah. But hey, I see K Willie, y'all. Even if y'all not in the same place or space or place, you can support each other and what that looks like. I would love to see us talk about it. And then let's make a pact that if you all do a supper club, if you all get it, if you execute, how about we make it a point that you come on the morning dew and you talk about the experience and what you got from it and maybe some lessons learned to help encourage other folks to do the same. Let's do that. That's my promise. That's my promise. It's K Willie. Misha, I'll send it to you. All right, y'all, let's get out of here. Be well, make it a great day. So happy to have you because doers get more done. Don't sue me, Home Depot. All right, peace.